A stormy sky raged above the demon lord's castle, lightning cracking amid dark clouds. Below the menacing fortress, buildings and stone walls stretched out, tense and bracing for what was to come. Inside, a tense moment gripped the group. Jin facing black-haired elf girl, blonde girl with circlet, and long-haired girl in maid-like dress standing together, asked what was wrong. The girls were united, their faces suggesting anxiety or distrust. When Jin started to say that if it was about the strategy for fighting the demon lord, he was cut off by someone saying his name. He turned, his jaw set, ready to hear what had to be said. With a cold face, Reki Arias declared plainly that in the name of the hero, Reki Arias, she was kicking him out of the party, making Jin's face freeze in stunned disbelief. With a serious expression, one of the girls asked Jin if he remembered their promise. Jin thought back to his journey. He had left a small village with his childhood friend Reki, who had received the hero blessing from the goddess, with the goal of defeating the demon lord. Along the way, they had added the sage Lucika to their team, and then the saint Yuuri. Together, they had fought the demon lord's army in various places. Eventually, they reached the day of the decisive battle at the demon lord's castle. Standing before the three girls, Jin was asked again if he remembered their promise. His face tense and blank as he remembered the promise. Wondering if that was what they were referring to, he recalled that when they set out on their journey, they made a pact with a priest. Jin had said that if he became a hindrance, he would leave the party, thinking to himself that he knew this day would come eventually. He said, "Yes, of course." Reki answered, "I see, that's good then," and he understood that the early bloomer blessing he possessed allowed for rapid growth but had limited potential. In the beginning, his contributions had been significant, but as the battles became more intense, he realized that he was becoming more of a burden. No matter how hard he trained, the gap between him and his companions never closed. Reki had overwhelming physical abilities and could purify demons. Yuuri embodied the goddess and granted holy blessings, and Ryushika wielded lost ancient arts with wisdom. Ryushika, with a grateful smile, assured Jin that he would remain their best companion, no matter what. Jin, with tears in his eyes, thanked both of them. Yuuri, full of emotion, promised they would carry on his feelings. Jin stood with an exhausted face, turned to Reki, and patted her head, saying she shouldn't worry because he was sure she could beat the demon lord. He told her to wait for him, saying that once they defeated the demon lord, he would come and get her right away. Ryushika and Yuuri were watching Reki and Jin when Jin suddenly said that he needed to pack his things and should head back to his room, turning to leave. Jin felt that what Ryuki said probably would not come true. He thought that after defeating the demon lord, they would become heroes, and it would probably become very difficult even to have a conversation. He added that he was also happy to travel with everyone, and thanked them with a gentle smile. Deep down, though, he admitted to himself that he truly wanted to fight alongside them until the very end. The conversation turned light-hearted as the three girls discussed their plans for the night. Yuuri asked if they should go to bed. Reki agreed, while Ryushika said she would step out to get some fresh air. The scene shifted to an exterior night view of a building window, framed by trees, the world outside calm and still, as Reki clung to the thought with anticipation. Her face turned serious, and she sat hugging her knees, thinking that as quickly as possible, she had to defeat the demon lord. In a burst of energy, Reki declared to herself that she had to do it, so she could go buy a wedding dress. She thought it wasn't that she disliked Yuuri or Ryushika, but compared to when they first set out her alone time with Jin, she wanted to go out in town with Jin after so long, just the two of them, before anything else. She wanted to arrange the entire wedding to Jin's liking. In her dreamlike fantasy, she imagined herself in a wedding dress, with Jin by her side, smiling among flowers and stars. Even though she couldn't control the power granted by the blessing, she thought Jin had still shown kindness to a misfit like her, and had always been her hero who stayed by her side. As children, they had sat together under a tree, and young Jin had told her that no matter what others said, he would always be on her side. She had asked if he really meant always, and he had promised that of course he would. He had added that Reki was precious family to him. Repeating those words, precious family, Yes. Reki, her face flushed with embarrassment, but her gaze filled with determination, asked if defeating the demon lord would make him agree to marry her. Jin, smiling casually, replied that if Reki still liked him by then, he would. A flashback showed Jin and Reki holding pinkies under a tree, sitting close together. Jin said she definitely would. They made a promise. Reki recalled the precious memories that had begun at age 5 when they had sealed their promise by linking pinky fingers. Reki acknowledged that Jin had said he remembered their promise too. This was why she had been fighting all this time. With their current strength, Reki was confident they could defeat the demon lord in just one day. However, if something were to happen to Jin, it would be troublesome. That was why Reki decided she would have him leave the party temporarily. Reki afterward collapsed onto her bed, still wearing the frilly outfit, and let out a heavy sigh. As Reki lay in bed with a serene smile, she quietly said goodnight to Jin, and as she drifted into sleep, her peaceful, smiling face whispered softly that she loved him. Her room stood quiet and empty with the closed door, marking the end of a long day. Meanwhile, Yuuri, with a mature face, was seen showering. She thought the Click Queen was being cute and probably thinking about it. Yuuri, meanwhile, was thinking more pragmatically. Even without Jin, she felt that their fighting power would not change much. She believed he could even become a weakness for the team. She could see right through what the hero was thinking. Reki had clearly planned to finish off the demon lord the next day, and then confess her true feelings to Jin. But she whispered an apology to Reki in her mind, stating that she could not give up either. She reflected that since childhood, she had prayed as a saint, but believed that no one ever really understood the pain she carried deep inside. Jin came to the door with the face full of surprise. He opened it to see a girl standing there. Sitting in a grand room with arched windows, Jin faced Yuuri and asked her to tell him a story about herself. Whether it was something fun or painful, he assured her that anything was fine. When she asked why he would go so far for her, Jin explained to her that everyone was saved by her prayers, but she herself had no one to turn to, and he thought that was wrong. Yuuri, in a soft, trembling voice, wondering if such a thing was even permitted, and then Jin gently reached for her hand, saying that it didn't matter whether someone permitted it or not. He told her that he didn't want to help the saint. He wanted to help Yuuri, and if there was anyone who said they wouldn't permit it, then he would punch them. His words to Yuuri, who still had tears in her eyes, stunned her. She wiped a tear, thinking how Jin-san was such a kind person that even her frozen heart seemed to melt when he looked at her with those passionate eyes. Jin-san had said, his face serious, that he wanted to support Yuuri. At that time, she had cried and couldn't reply. But later she thought with a determined face that the perfect time had finally come. She thought about the sadness Jin had shown when leaving the room and wondered if he had gotten his heart broken, thinking he had been rejected by her. With a firm resolve, the nun girl told herself not to worry and grabbed a towel, saying that she would use everything of the saint to heal him. After all, she thought, her virginity was just something she could give up, and if necessary, she would simply quit being a saint. Besides that, he reminded himself that it was also for Ryushika and Reki. She imagined that after defeating the demon lord, the party would disband, and it would become difficult for Jin to see them due to their respective positions. She reasoned that the country and the people could not treat him poorly. However, if he gained the position of the saint's husband, it would not only secure his status, but also make it easier for Reki and the others to meet him too. In her mind, she pictured a joyous royal wedding between her and Jin, while the others watched and celebrated. She told herself that Reki should be asleep by then and thought that the serious Ryushika was probably preparing for tomorrow. This made Ryushika sure it was the perfect plan for her to cross the line that night. She went to Jin's room. When the Yuuri entered the room, she found it empty. Her face tensed in sudden confusion. As she walked over to the table, she wondered out loud where Jin was, but then noticed something. It was a letter. Yuuri crushed it in her hand, cursing that old elf. A magical pattern glowed on the ground of a forested area, signaling the end of a teleportation event. With a casual tone, Jin thanked Ryushika for coming all the way to the village. Ryushika replied that to her, teleportation magic was child's play, something incredibly simple. Ryushika, smiling warmly, had said that she was actually interested in Jin's hometown too, and asked if he would show her around. Jin had replied that it was for a friend, so he didn't mind. He didn't know what face to show everyone. Honestly, he was grateful that Rishika had brought him. Armed with a bag and a smile, the protagonist thanked Ryushika, saying he was always indebted to her. Ryushika, walking beside him with animal-like ears, replied with teasing dismissal, saying she just needed to return by tomorrow morning. She softly added that wanting to deepen bonds with companions until then wasn't a bad thing, right? Jin smiled shyly with his hand behind his head, admitting that he was really happy, though he confessed he had been a bit down. He said he couldn't offer much hospitality, but invited her to come with him. Ryushika, with a shadowed expression, thought it was almost time and felt nervous. Ryushika Eldia had once been born as an elf, and at that time was around 2,800 years old in human terms. She was at an age where many of her peers had already started families, but Ryushika had become so absorbed in her research that she had no time to even think about marriage. Before she knew it, she found herself with both feet firmly planted in spinsterhood, coming home to an empty house. She would quietly announce her return to no one, with a face that seemed as though it could shatter from the strain. She described how even with the blessing of a sage, or perhaps because she was a sage, she was avoided. In the end, she couldn't even get marriage meetings. No man wanted a woman like Ryushika, she said, and she cried to her parents, but it was already too late. Even with the blessing of the sage, Ryushika was avoided, she thought, and in the end, Ryushika couldn't even get marriage proposals. As a result, Ryushika decided to run away. Jin, holding a mug, responded with genuine interest. She couldn't forget how Jin had been unlike other men, while she was at her lowest point and had tried to mask her feelings with jokes about her spinsterhood. Jin had calmly told her that he thought she was considerate and wonderful, adding that he was sure she'd make a great wife. Ryushika, visibly blushing, had managed to choke out her words, saying that if she was completely hopeless by then, she would just make him take her. Jin responded that if someone like him was okay, he'd be happy to. And at that moment, Ryushika thought, of course, he'd fall in love. Ryushika, her face blushing and barely able to contain her emotions, was increased as Jin said she was really reliable and thanked her for always helping before he could finish his thoughts. Ryushika had asked what his type of woman was. Jin, touching his chin, said that he might prefer older women. Ryushika smiled confidently, thinking that soon this strong yet gentle boy would be hers. She turned and saw that it was almost time. He then walked home that evening, with Ryushika beside him. He told her that this was his house, and as he stood in front of the door, Ryushika gently grabbed his shoulder. Jin stayed silent for a moment, before turning to her seriously, saying her name. Ryushika smiled and told him that he had certainly saved people, and that he could walk through that door with pride. Jin knocked on the door and thanked Ryushika. A voice from inside answered. A middle-aged man opened the door, looking surprised and sleepy, asking who it was. Upon seeing the man, Jin's father stood stunned. Jin smiled gently and said, "I'm home, Dad." Inside the house, Jin's mother, wearing an apron, turned in surprise as Jin and his father entered. The atmosphere grew happy and welcoming as Jin's father announced to her that Jin had come home. She welcomed him home, her face filled with joy. Jin introduced Ryushika, who stood facing his parents in her elegant dress, looking polite and slightly nervous, explaining that this person. Ryushika then introduced herself to Jin's father and mother, calmly and boldly saying that she was Jin's fiancé, and greeting them as her father-in-law and mother-in-law. Jin was stunned, wondering what she was saying, with wide eyes and sweat trickling down his face. And Jin's father and mother were shown looking shocked and scared, while exclaiming in disbelief. Inside a cozy house, Jin sat with his family and Ryushika, feeling overwhelmed and wondering if he was dreaming. His mother commented that Ryushika truly seemed to love him, while his father said Jin was lucky to catch such a beauty. Ryushika added that they had come that day to greet his parents. Jin, still tense, let out a panicked "gah," struggling to process the situation. He tried to regain control and told Ryushika they needed to talk about their future. His father, surprised, repeated, "Their future." A hand suddenly touched Jin's shoulder, and a voice told him to listen without being surprised. Blushing and smiling with sincere affection, Ryushika confessed directly that she liked Jin. Jin, frantically repeating "wait," was visibly stunned. He asked in a panic why she was doing this now, saying that she had never once shown any signs of liking him. But Ryushika, grabbing his hand and stopping him, reminded him of a conversation from before. She said that when she had asked if he would take her if she couldn't get married, he replied that he'd be happy to do so. Jin admitted that he had indeed said that. Ryushika, with intense enthusiasm, declared she would go to the front lines right away with a determined face. But before that, she added, after spending one night with Jin, Jin was stunned, repeating in shock the words, "one night together." He tried to bring the conversation back to the Demon Lord, mentioning that without the sage, the others couldn't manage. But Ryushika, still blushing, insistently interrupted him, saying he was the only one for her. Ryushika was certainly a wonderful woman. However, he thought, suddenly becoming husband and wife was a huge leap. Jin, trembling, admitted that Ryushika was indeed a wonderful woman. Jin turned to Ryushika. Jin thought carefully, asking himself if there would ever be any woman who would marry him in the future. Looking at Ryushika, he wondered if she, Ryushika, with her good style and equipment and calm atmosphere, was the kind of woman he admired. He respected her as a person too. The opportunity to marry such a woman, he thought. Was he then? But he turned to Ryushika and asked her if she would go outside with him for a bit. Jin led Ryushika out to the wooden dock, and behind them, the group was stunned and shouted Jin's name. Then something unexpected happened. Ryushika reacted with a frightened face. She screamed as Jin spoke her name. Ryushika had cornered Jin against the wall under the moonlight. Both of them were blushing and tense. He asked if she was really serious about it, and she said of course she was. Jin, sweating and with tension, admitted that he couldn't confidently say he loved her yet, but he told her she was a precious companion to him. Yet now, he wanted to see her as a woman. Tears streamed down Ryushika's face as she smiled and asked what he was saying, to which Jin, his face close to her, calmly put his hand on his shoulder and, to his surprise, hugged him. She then softly said that Jin was who she wanted more than anyone. Ryushika and Jin sat close, lost in an intimate, emotional moment. Jin softly said her name, drew closer, and she responded warmly. Suddenly, a figure appeared, yelling she wouldn't let it happen, and delivered a powerful blow to Jin, sending him flying. The new arrival was a girl, dressed in a maid outfit. Ryushika, shocked, reached out and called after Jin. Yuuri and Reki reacted with panic and distress, faces full of shock and worry. Jin collapsed, coughing and grunting in pain. Ryushika shouted his name in alarm. The three girls stared down at him with shock and concern. Yuuri asked if he was okay, and Reki pleaded for him not to die. Jin, with a slightly annoyed face and closed eyes, thought to himself that it was they who had done this. Suddenly, Ryushika pushed two others aside, saying they were in the way and should move. She claimed that treatment should be left to her. Ryushika tried to argue, but Yuuri explained that magic of the same type cancels each other out. Ryushika, blushing, admitted that healing him was the right thing to do. The girls continued to argue over who would do the healing magic, with each pushing to be the one. Ryushika demanded that both move away, while Yuuri yelled, demanding to know why she needed to touch his side for the magic. Reki, called the Pink Saint, told them both to move aside. Jin thought being thought of so much by his companions made him truly blessed, but at the same time, Reki, with a tiara, appearing to prepare for mouth to mouth, while two others reacted in panic, with one of them screaming that mouth to mouth wasn't relevant right now. The frilly girl desperately tried to heal Jin, but the girl restraining her held her back, yelling not to interrupt the treatment. Suddenly, all three girls turned with tense faces and shouted, "Jin-san." The girl thought that his consciousness was already fading. Jin, meanwhile, heard the girls screaming to wake up, with another shouting, "Don't die." He woke up in a strange place, seeing a serene blue sky. He wondered where he was, then guessed this must be his room. Jin sat up, clutching his blanket. He noticed something odd. His body felt unusually heavy. Jin quickly pulled back his blanket in shock to reveal a girl lying next to him, asleep. Staring in disbelief at her face, he wondered why Yuuri was there. Jin, now flustered, had reached out to wake Yuuri, who was still asleep at his side. He remembered that the previous day, Ryushika had confessed to him, and then Reki had suddenly appeared out of nowhere amidst the chaos. Jin, now out of bed and sitting up, looked awkward and flustered. Yuuri, still asleep, was draped over his lap. Both of them were in sleepwear, but no matter what, he thought, that position was bad. Besides, why was she even in his bed? He immediately yelled for her to wake up, and the girl Yuuri responded, asking what, with a still tired and confused face. Suddenly, she sat up, rising, and asked Jin-sam. Yuuri greeted them with a yawn, still in her sleepwear, asking how he was feeling now. And Jin, in his newfound energy, said he was fine. He thanked her for treating him. Jin asked what her plans were for the day. She told him it was the day of the Demon Lord's subjugation, and she would pray for everyone's safety. Jin replied that was good to hear, and wondered what her plans had been for the day. Suddenly, he became tense and asked angrily why she was in a place like that. It was an important battle for peace. What would they do without the hero party?